to another self-love sermon. Hi! How are we doing, folks? Once you're here, put a comment in the chat below. Let me know that you're joining me for another sermon. So glad to be here with you all. I did take a break last week, which was the first time I have skipped a sermon since we started this series, and it was a much needed recharge and break and a nourishing moment of rest for myself. So thank you all for your understanding. I'm going to grab a block, prop my microphone up here. How is everyone doing? I'm doing good. I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk today with you all about perfection. And Luna concurs. She's excited as well. She'll probably make some noises. My dog, who I adopted a couple of months ago, she hangs out with me in the office every day while I do my work, and sometimes she makes noises. It's really funny. But yeah, perfection is going to be the theme of today's talk. And I really want to push you to think outside the box with perfectionism. It's not always, maybe what you've thought of in the past as that perfectionist in your life who, struggles so much with perfectionism. It could be something really subtle. It could be, striving for something that doesn't exist. It could be, just a really light little track in the background of the inner critic just whispering, softly, like, you'll never be enough. Perfectionism can take many shapes and forms. Hi, Micah. Hi, Brenna. Welcome. Welcome, dear ones. All right. So just a brief overview for anyone who doesn't know what's going on Instagram or Facebook or in the replay, the podcast version. So this is Self-Love Sermons. I am Ellen Gilbert. I'm the founder of Luminous Leanings. I am a self-care coach, really a self-love and self-compassion coach, kind of pushed through with the Trojan horse of self-care, talking about, sleep, wellness, everything from nutrition to your self-talk to how you relate to yourself at the end of the day. That's what it's all about. That's my jam. That's my passion, talking to people about how they relate to themselves and where they're suffering in their lives and how it can be mitigated. Okay, so a lot of my self-love sermons are rooted in the Dharma, which is, the truth, the path, borrowed from Buddhism, this word Dharma. And so there will be certain Buddhist concepts woven throughout, but I really try to make it, accessible for a wide audience. And I'm always kind of weaving in different aspects of my spirituality, what's going on and coming up for me these days in my relationship to myself, how I'm caring for myself right now. And so this is something we do. We get together every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time for about an hour, and we have a little chit chat. Hi, Claire. Hi, Caitlin. Welcome, darling ones. Welcome to the party. How is everyone doing? I'm gonna kick it off right away with an inquiry. So please type your answers below. And if you're joining us in the replay, put your answer in the comments below. So, as I said, the theme for tonight is perfection. So I really want the inquiry to be, if I were this, then I would be happy. Fill in that blank. If I were blank, then I would be happy. I want to know, what is that word for you guys, or that phrase? It could be maybe not something you so much see as becoming as something you see as getting. But remember, we're talking about perfection. So we're talking about worthiness and belonging. And what is that belief system that is operating under the surface? If I were this, then I would be happy. Whatever happy means to you. It's like, then I could relax. Then I would have success. Then I would have love. Then I would have peace. I would finally have this thing, this feeling, or then my life would start, maybe. Is there a sense that you've been putting off living, being present because you're waiting on something? What is that thing? For me, I'll admit, like, a really big hurdle for me has been like when my business gets to that next level, then I'll be happy. Just to be really transparent, like every stage of my business, I've kind of had this narrative going in the background. And this is not to say it's bad or to judge ourselves. We're going to talk tonight about how we can be more skillful with these beliefs, We want to be more skillful. We want to suffer less. All right. Claire says, in shape. Oh, yes, that's a big one, dear one. I hear that all the time. That resonates so much with me. Caitlin, content. Ooh, yes. Once I'm content, then I'll be happy, But what is content, right? It can be so elusive and ambiguous. Brenna, confident. Once I'm confident, then I'll be happy. Yeah, that resonates with me too. Marissa, fully confident in myself and who I am. So we've got 2 for the confidence here. Ladies, loving it. Brenna, and stress-free, she says. Stress-free. Talk about unattainable. I mean, stress-free, to have no stress. That is quite the mirage in the desert, isn't it? Same with perfection, dear ones. Beautiful check-ins. Thank you all for sharing. I feel seen. I feel witnessed. I hope you do as well. So just a little housekeeping right off the bat before we dive into all of these things and why it matters. If tonight's talk resonates with you and you feel so led, here is the link to make a donation. I give these talks for free, so if you feel inspired or taken care of in tonight's talk and like you can make a little energetic exchange, I welcome it. Okay, so here's the link to donate securely through PayPal. You can also sign up for regular reminders. Never miss a self-love sermon again. As you know, I took a break last week, so that also went out to my email subscribers. So if you want to kind of have all the up-to-date info, not to mention joining my incredible email list where I share freebies often related to the self-love sermons. I share the replay, I share the podcast. I share any other little bits and bobs from the land of luminous leanings. Please do sign up for those reminders. And the last thing I'll remind you is to just share it with your friends right now. You can click share if you're watching on Facebook. If you're on Instagram, you can tag me and share it to your stories. And just let your friends know, like, hey, we're over here talking about perfection, y'all. Get your booties over here. This is some good stuff. And invite your friends for next week. Dear ones, we want to grow this community. Thank you all so much for being here. I know your time is so sacred, and it means a lot that you're spending some time with me on a Tuesday. All right, dear ones, so let's dive right in. The little ritual, as always. I have to find some matches real quick. I had my moon circle last night. Full moon energy still in the air. So happy full moon to everyone. Full moon in Aquarius. Really, really special time for the world, for social justice, for change. We focused on shadow work last night, but all this to say, I burned my candle for quite a while last night and it's running a bit low, but we'll see if we can get another good use out of it. So grab a candle if you wish. And when we light this candle, it symbolizes the container of the space we are holding for ourselves. You know, this is a community, but we're here individually as well. We're here to look at the way we relate to ourselves, to figure out if we can love ourselves a bit more, if we can bring a bit more ease, if we can suffer a bit less, if we can be a bit more skillful. And so, as long as this candle is burning, may we be practicing self compassion, self love, and self care. Put this here. Here we go, dear ones. Let's kick it off with a little breathing and meditative inquiry. So, coming to stillness. You know, meditation is really important for a lot of the themes we cover tonight. Perfection, again, is the theme, and looking at worthiness and belonging. So to really contact that requires these inquiries, these moments of relaxing the body, becoming aware of this inner experience, and really separating the spirit from the ego. Okay, we're going to talk more about that. So coming into a comfortable seat with a spine that is both upright and relaxed. Closing the eyes if that feels okay. Take a deep breath in through the nose, filling the lungs completely. And let it go through the mouth with an audible sigh. Great job. 2 more just like that. In. One more. Allow your breath to return to normal. Come into contact with your feet on the floor, your seat making contact with the support below. The entire body in space. The mind relaxed, aware of this body here sitting in space. Drinking in the air through the nose. Aware of every breath, without trying to manipulate or change it in any way. We're going to inquire a bit of the ego. So I invite your ego to come forward. Perhaps remembering your check-in. What was the thing that if you were, you would be happy? If I were confident, if I were thin, if I were rich, right? If I had that partner. Some external longing. Bringing it to mind. Can you sense with subtle awareness how this longing is driven by the ego? Or perhaps if you feel disconnected from ego as a word, the inner critic, the inner controller. Keep breathing. Perhaps sensing the body's response to this force. Is it a contraction? Tightening? A longing? Without trying to conceptualize, just become aware of the sensations. Do you feel them in your chest? Perhaps the belly? It's good to be aware. Where these things show up. Is there any sense of shame present? Shame around this longing, or shame around your distance from this thing that you don't have yet. Dear one, do you believe you are worthy of this thing, or in some twisted way that you will not be worthy until you get it? And what's it like to observe? Now, letting the ego part get smaller and smaller as your awareness expands, the attachment eases up a bit. Returning again to the breathing. Returning again to the awareness of the breathing, of the being. Aware of this greater field that includes the ego, but includes the spirit as well. Taking a deep breath in through the nose, filling the lungs completely. And let it go. Great job. Letting the breath return to normal when you are ready, gently blinking the eyes open. Welcome back. Welcome back. What was that like for you? I'm wondering. How did it show up in the body? This can be our first sign that perfectionism is at play, that the ego is at play, that there's some suffering under the surface. So let's get really good at describing and remembering how it feels in the body. It's skillful to do this. If anyone wants to share where the ego showed up in the body, please type it in the chat below. So I read this quote today and I shared it. It's an unattributed quote, but it says, be led by your spirit, not driven by your ego. And it really summed up a lot of the work I'm doing with my clients right now in my 12-week coaching program, Become Your Own Soulmate. It summed up a lot about what I've been suspicious of in my own mind, which is, what is the self? What is the self? Because we have an ego, but we also have a spirit, but they also can control us. So what are we? And I think we are the one who is aware of these things. And I was thinking about this, driven by the ego. That's what you just experienced in your body, that feeling. Yes, perhaps a contraction. Brenna says she felt shame, slouching shoulders. Micah says she's trying so hard to be in touch with spirit. She was resistant to bring too much awareness to inner critic / ego because she was afraid it would completely take over. Lots of tension in the chest, shoulders, and hips. That makes sense, Micah. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being courageous and practicing with us tonight. Caitlin says, discomfort when thinking about the things I think if only I could attain, I would be happy. It is uncomfortable to think about these things. There can be shame and attachment and even just a sense of like, why is it this way? But guess what? We're not alone, are we? We're all in this together, and we are not separate in our striving or in our perfection, even though it shows up a little different for everyone. We're still connected by it. There's nothing wrong with us or bad about us, Claire said she felt it was harder to breathe. Yeah, that makes sense. The contraction. And so thinking about how we can reverse engineer some of these. I was talking with a client yesterday about hunched shoulders, protected heart versus shoulders back, heart forward. Trust, shining, leading with the heart, leading with the spirit then. And perhaps deep breathing to counteract the hard to breathe times. So this sense of being driven by the ego, this contraction, versus led by the heart, led by the spirit, right? That's what we're thinking about tonight. It's kind of like either being driven by your perfection or being led by your inherent worthiness. I'm going to pause there. And just think of this. We can either be driven by perfection or be led by inherent worthiness. And I talk about these things a lot. I talk about inherent worthiness. It's not a simple concept that you're just going to grasp and be like, okay, now I'm worthy. Now I've got it forever. It is a constant practice. And we're going to talk about practice. Practice is the antidote for perfection. I really do believe this. So perfection, it is not real. This ideal, it is a lie. It is false. It is bullshit. I've told some of you one of my mantras is perfection is bullshit. Just need to see that every day. It's imaginary. Perfection does so much harm. This concept of perfect. I almost wish it wasn't even a word. Perfection. Perfect. And we say it. We say like, oh, perfect. It's interesting. How many people pride themselves on being perfectionists? It's like that thing in a job interview. Like, what's the one thing, your least favorite quality? Oh, I'm a perfectionist. It's like such a fake answer. People pride themselves saying like, oh yeah, I'm a perfectionist, It's like a badge of honor. Saying I'm a perfectionist is like a skip and a jump away from saying I'm perfect. It can be. But few people actually make the connection that for some it's a really painful affliction that people live with day in and day out. This isn't like a badge of honor, it can create unimaginable suffering for people. And to identify as a perfectionist is a bit problematic because we all, to be human, right? To be human is to be at one time or another striving for perfection. You know? Why do we do it if it's not attainable, if it's not a thing that we can actually have? Because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, there's a lot of mirages in the desert, there's a lot of fodder for the comparison mind. And now more than ever, right? You know, one of the beautiful things about Instagram, I see people showing up on like Instagram stories and being like, I'm not going to wear makeup because this is hashtag real or like hashtag no filter. But it's also kind of like another false narrative, right? Because the overwhelming, I think, impact of social media has been to create a lot more harm than good, obviously, with the comparisonitis, which is so prevalent. And the creators of these apps have said, like, we are just trying to engineer something that is a race to the bottom of the brainstem. They've admitted to that. You know, anyway, not to go on too much of a diatribe against social media, but we have to use it as a tool and we have to use it with really intentional, conscious boundaries. As we do have to be conscious and intentional about our boundaries with anything that could lead to triggering and comparison. And it's going to look different for everyone, but it's also not going to be that different, you know? Don't get too caught up in the I'm special because really these were all engineered to create a comparison mindset within us, you know? And so I've been thinking about how I wish we had a word for the opposite of perfectionism, like anti-perfectionism or imperfectionism, but it just doesn't work because imperfectionism is extremely loaded in our culture. You know, like who would want to say, oh, I'm an imperfectionist, right? It has to be sexy. So if you guys have any ideas on a word for like the opposite of a perfectionist or for someone who's really trying to apply this new lens to their life, I'm all ears. I think it'd be really interesting. Like, could we make it maybe like humanize, you know? Can you humanize yourself a bit? Can you? Claire says, don't give a fuck. I love it. That's true. Fucks to give has become like a thing people say. Like, oh, I'm all out of fucks. Like, I have no fucks to give. Um, that's true. That's become kind of a thing. Yeah. I was talking with some moon sisters last night and someone said, you know, you've normalized my humanity in sharing sort of the imperfections. And that's what we do here, right? Ooh, Micah says acceptance. Yeah, acceptance. But also, I mean, I feel like it's a great word, but there's something about our culture that just doesn't accept it as enough, you know? And I've thought about this addiction to like abundance. Like, why can't we just have enoughness? Like, what is it about our culture and these words that are incompatible, you know? And maybe they don't need a PR campaign to be, you know, fitting into our culture. But I find it endlessly interesting, you know? But how can we normalize imperfection, normalize failure, normalize mistakes, normalize, you know, the fact that I was listening to a podcast today about just how many drafts the Declaration of Independence went through. It was like 46. And all of these works of art, they were just listing like how many drafts and how many this and that. And it's fascinating. And also the number of successful people who have had like successful startups or business ideas, like all the failures that they had beforehand. There's actually a nonprofit I had heard of that is trying really hard to like change the way we look at failure and trying to get people to fail. And I don't even like the fail better, because that even feels like loaded. But maybe you've heard that, like, oh, well, you're going to fail, so let's just fail better. But it's like, well, let's just fail. not to set ourselves up for failure, but to set ourselves up for living our freaking lives. Brenna says, I like to tell myself I'm doing my best, and to me that means I can only do my best, not the best. And she put an upside down smiley face, which, if anyone can explain this emoji to me, I think it's really adorable. I never know what it means. Yes, my best, not the best. That's good, Brenna. I like that. And it's like to put another condition on that. Maybe it's like my best right now, you know? In this energetic context of this moment, you know? That's good, dear ones. Very good. I love it. So why are we perfectionists? Why are we running around trying to be perfect when it's not possible? I'll give you 2 good reasons. The 2 core drives I believe every human is operating within: worthiness and belonging. That's it. Worthiness and belonging. Worthiness and belonging. It underpins frickin' everything, and you guys are probably so sick of hearing me talk about it, but I can't stop. Like, this is everything. This is everything. When you really have a good dialogue with the ego parts, what it always comes down to are these 2 things. What's always underneath the fear? What's always underneath the controlling? Worthiness and belonging. Get really familiar with these words, dear ones, because you're going to have to ask yourself, where are my needs of worthiness and belonging not being met? Or could I go about this thing in a way that's more worthiness and belonging nurturing? Worthiness and belonging. Everything. The desire to find love or start a family, belonging. The desire to be as successful as possible at work, worthiness. The desire to have 1 million followers, worthiness and belonging, The desire to, whatever the thing is that you mentioned in the beginning of our sermon tonight, worthiness and belonging, I think they underpin it all. And these are clearly 2 very noble, pure, wholesome intentions. No one can argue that these are not, that these aren't good things to long for and hope for. This is underpinning the ego parts, efforts. It's a good intention, worthiness and belonging. But the ego has really, really shitty methods that are not skillful, that are not efficient, that are not always rational in getting to these desired outcomes. So that's the problem with the ego parts, okay? I mean, among many others. But to try to make it really simple, right? We've talked about this before. Your fear, your controlling, your stress, your, suffering, any ego attachment. Deep, deep down, it wants worthiness and belonging, and it's not going about it in the right way. Perfectionism being one of those ways. Okay? Perfectionism being kind of the epitome of how far the inner critic can go. The extreme of the ego part, kind of going about something. And do you know what the truth is, dear one? Do you know what the secret is? Drum roll, please. You are already worthy and you already belong. Like, just take a moment to like let that in. You can close the eyes, you can place the hands on the heart like I always do. You are already worthy. You already belong. Say it with me. I am worthy. I can't hear you. I am worthy. And I belong. I am worthy and I belong. Yes. Take a deep breath in. Let that go. I am worthy and I belong. Come back to us. This is the truth. So why is the ego running around trying to get these external things, trying to convince you that not until you're perfect will you have the worthiness and the belonging? You know, I think the ego is resistant because it's like, if I'm already worthy and belong, how will I fill my days? How will I see myself reflected all around me? How will I know that I'm controlling everything? How will I self-actualize? How will I make my mark on this world? You know, these are all very egoic thought patterns. You know, I have to do, I have to become, I have to transform, I have to assert myself, I have to make up my identity and constantly be redrawing those boundaries of my identity every day, every day. I am this, I am this, I am this. It's exhausting. And it is in direct contrast to the inherent truth that we are already enough, worthy, and we belong. Okay? The ego is trying to run away from any feeling of emptiness. Spoiler alert, emptiness in spirituality is a good thing. I know your ego mind, your Western mind doesn't want to hear that. But it is true. When we can quiet the thoughts, right? You are not your thoughts. Then we can experience emptiness in this beautiful field of awareness where we can contact our true nature, which is worthy and belongs. So I'm going to touch on a Buddhist concept tonight for those of you who might be interested in learning a little bit about Buddhism. But I like to bring it home. You know, it's not just for Buddhists. This is for everyone. So in Buddhism, we talk about the 3 refuges. Refuges from suffering, refuges from egoic thinking, and these are the 3 refuges. So the first one in Buddhism is the Buddha, refuge in the Buddha, or as we would conceptualize it maybe, refuge in your Buddha nature, which is your natural loving kindness, your natural state, the state when the ego has quieted, has relaxed. That's the first refuge, your loving kindness. This is why you are inherently worthy. Okay? And we can contact this in meditation. With great practice, we can contact it more and more off the meditation cushion, off the yoga mat. We can contact it more and more in our daily lives. And even when the ego is activated, we can contact this. But it takes practice. It requires intentional, conscious work. And it requires forgiving yourself when you have to remember to come back to it. And we'll talk about that. But that's the first refuge, okay? Your loving kindness. This is why you are worthy. Number 2 refuge is awareness, or the truth, or presence. Okay, in Buddhism, this is the Dharma. Refuge in the Dharma, or refuge in presence, we'll call it tonight. That refuge you experience only when you step outside of the striving, the attachment, the either leaning forward into the future or looking back into the past, right? That rare moment where you're really right here, right now. You can listen to the words I'm saying as I'm saying them. You're present. That's the second refuge. This is how you know you are inherently worthy. So the Buddha nature is why you're inherently worthy. And the presence is how you can know that you're inherently worthy, only when that space opens up. And the third refuge is refuge in belonging or community. Or in Buddhism, we call this Sangha, which is my community of practice, my spiritual friends. You all are my Sangha tonight, and you are a Sangha with each other. This is a small piece of the greater belonging of which we are all a part, which includes the web of life, all beings everywhere, the entire universe, and all who are in it, right? So this is the belonging piece. I kind of think of belonging as the end goal of worthiness, because for me, and I can't speak for everyone, in my experience, any attempt at getting more worthy or getting more enough, getting more perfect is really underpinning a goal I have to belong in community with everyone. I can sense that deep down. That really is my goal. I don't know if that resonates with any of you. These are the three refuges: your loving kindness, your presence, and your belonging. So Tara Brach, who you all know is my Dharma teacher, she wrote a book called True Refuge. And she talks about the refuges in great depth. And she also talks about false refuges. And this is what I was saying. These are the ego's way of trying to get refuge without the three true refuges. So these are the false refuges, the strategies that seek to comfort and gratify. They seek to comfort and gratify, but they are temporary fixes. They do not sustain. They cannot hold. They do not work. They end up creating greater pain and suffering in the long run. So just think about that. So a little bit about my story. I never identified as a perfectionist, ever, until just a few years ago. I thought that a perfectionist was someone who really had trouble maybe meeting deadlines, turning in their work because, the product was never good enough. That's sort of what I thought a perfectionist was. And now I see all around me, I have several friends who struggle with different veins and different aspects of perfectionism. Friends and family and colleagues and clients and everyone in my network, right? In my community. So I have a friend with, OCD who feels like they have to take perfect care of everything that they have. And the suffering this creates is really enormous. I have someone close to me with crippling social anxiety. And they ask me, did I say the right thing? I hope I didn't offend you, this and that, Or an artist friend who is super creative but has those debilitating blocks. They can't share their art with the world because it's never good enough. What a tragedy, what a loss. The list goes on and on. So once I started to notice, perfection runs deep and we all have it. We're not separate. I really realized and opened to my own unique brand of perfectionism, which is this inner controller who says, I have to do it all. And I'm a type 7 on the Enneagram. My core motivation is to be, is to feel good, is to be happy. I'm the optimist. That's really my type. And so you would think like, oh, how could the optimist ever have, perfectionism? Well, trust me, it can be exhausting trying to fill my schedule, my calendar, with all of the activities. And optimists, the type 7, they run from stillness. It's a wonder I cultivated a meditation practice and was able to do this because it's not easy for me. My default programming is to fill my time, every moment of it. And there is a really genuine sense of like, life is short. I want to really live it to the fullest. That's my greatest desire. And I could, as a result, end up filling my time, filling, the space in between with more. It's lately been like, what can I learn? What can I do? It's sort of like a never ending goal of like progress. And, while that can be very noble and very worthy, it gets to a point where it's just not fun anymore, and that's when my stress response has kicked in. That's when the perfectionism has taken over. Like it ceased to be just a quirky part of my personality or something I use to have fun, and it's gone over the cliff into the controlling ego side, and I'm really caught in this suffering contraction of like, I have to be this thing. And another big thing for me is like the house. Like I want my house to be clean and organized. And I really suffer when I judge myself, and I don't kind of let grace in. grace, and forgiveness, and kind of let that fill in the cracks and let me rest and let me relax. So, what's your personal brand of perfectionism, dear ones? I would love to hear, if you want to summarize it for us below. Like, what is that thing? Is something coming to mind for you that's like, oh yeah, this is the thing that I really hook on to? Maybe it's related to that thing. If I were this, then I'd be happy, When will it be enough? When will it be enough? So, I want to talk before we close about practice as the antidote for perfectionism. Practice. It's a funny word. It has many meanings. It could mean you're preparing for a test, or it could be, your daily ritual, the way you live your life. And in Buddhism, we talk about practice as the meditation and the returning to that Buddha nature, or that loving kindness, or that inherent worthiness. That's the practice. How quickly can we return? How often can we return? Much like when you're in a meditation, have you experienced this? Your thoughts will wander. The practice is to return, to let the thoughts go, to return to the breath, to the awareness, to the true self. Just the awareness. And to do so with loving kindness, with metta, with self-compassion. That means non-judgment, understanding. These are the opposites of perfectionism. Like, to come back, to forgive the imperfection, even in the meditation, but then The purpose of this practice of meditation isn't for some test you're going to take. Practice doesn't make perfect, you know? I hate that. Practice makes practice. It makes more practice. The point is to practice. Like, when I got that a little bit with meditation, I automatically had a daily meditation practice because it was no longer this thing to measure myself against. You know? Do this in any area of your life. Just notice, am I measuring myself against another, or myself against another version of myself, or myself against some idea of perfection? Because I guarantee you've done this probably in every area. So really to be aware and to come back to the intention, right? So the practice is the point. Life is the test, you know? We sit for longer and longer in meditation practice so that when we're off the cushion, we can bring these tactics in, and especially when we're triggered, when our ego is activated, which I'll tell you will happen in situations often with a partner, with, you know, people you're very close to, with reading the news, particular people who really activate your ego. Become aware. How does it feel? You know, okay, this is happening, we're aware. And then the practice is to return to the worthiness, return to the belonging. And it starts right here. You belong to yourself. You belong to yourself. That's number one. Number one. Okay? So Tara Brach, again, she says that the spiritual path is just this oscillation between forgetting and remembering. That's it. We've either forgotten and we're suffering and we're being controlled by the ego, driven by the ego, right? Or we remember and we've returned and we're being led by the spirit. You know, suffering has ceased. There's a spaciousness as opposed to a contraction. Spaciousness, contraction. Okay? Remembering and forgetting. This is what underpins the entire spiritual path. So why would you make a moral judgment? You know, if someone you love forgot, you know, to buy milk at the grocery and it was on the list, you know, would you beat them up over it? Would you say you are a terrible person? How dare you forget? You are imperfect. I'm throwing you out. No. So why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we make these moral judgments on ourselves for forgetting? It's natural. We all do this. You are not alone. You are not separate. You are not special in this sense. Okay? You will forget. The practice is that when you forget, you remember you've forgotten. That's why noticing the body signals is important. When you remember you've forgotten, you make the U-turn with compassion, without judgment. That's everything. That's it. Like, I could stop now. Like, that's everything. This is not my message. This is a piece of truth that has been handed to me and that I want to share, you know? When you forget and you remember you've forgotten, remember. It's that simple. So the ego really has to relax with all of this, you know? And it will with the returning and the repetition. This is the whole point, you know? We matter no matter what. It's not based on some attainable external goal. It's already true. Sit with this intentionally, consciously. Make this your meditation. Make your life about embodied worthiness. Even when you don't believe it, even when you don't freaking feel like it. You know? So big takeaways. You know, how can you interrupt or distract this perfectionism? Maybe it's saying, I don't want to suffer. This just isn't fun anymore. Or perfection is bullshit. Those are 3 of my favorites. And then you have to have the inquiry. Some basic need has not been met here related to worthiness and belonging. So you can ask, what basic need have I not met? Again, you wouldn't make a moral judgment for someone forgetting the milk. Don't make a moral judgment on yourself for this basic need not being met. Maybe it's something from childhood which you had no control over. You know, maybe you're just hungry. Like, it could be as big or as small as that. So it's within your power now to meet that need. Okay? You are in control. The ego will love that one. You can meet this need. No one can meet it for you. So, or at least not without you asking them to. Okay? So, noticing that brand of perfectionism, noticing your stress triggers, and then when it happens, interrupt it. Tap out. This isn't fun anymore. I'm tapping out. You know? That's the U-turn. And then what is the basic need? You know? If I'm cleaning my house in a frantic frenzy because I'm stressed about something that happened at work, maybe the basic need in that sense is belonging. Maybe I need to, call a friend who's in alignment with my sense of belonging. But looking for ways to nourish, meet our needs in a way that is in alignment with worthiness and belonging, that affirms and reaffirms and helps us remember, right? Return to our worthiness and belonging. So that would be my final inquiry tonight, dear ones. Just what are some ways you can meet your needs that, perfection is trying to meet? How can you meet that more skillfully in a way that affirms your worthiness and your belonging? It's a very broad question, but if there are any specific ideas, I think it'd be really fun to get a list going. We can continue after this self-love sermon as well. How are you going to meet those needs and nourish your own worthiness and belonging in a way that directly opposes the perfectionist drive? And how can you be led by spirit and not driven by ego? How can you intuit what the right nourishment is? Using the body, using the intuition, using spirit guides, which we'll have to talk about on another call, on another sermon. Using your spirituality, whatever that means to you, using the intuition. I'd love to hear, dear ones. For me, some things that affirm my worthiness and belonging. Asking for help, asking my husband for a hug, for intentional eye contact. To ask for these things is to affirm that I am worthy of them and that they already belong to me. And I'm trying to get better. I think to ask for help and to be specific about our needs, it's to resource with that community. So it's to trust the belonging. Because if you didn't trust it, you wouldn't ask. And it's to trust the worthiness because you believe that you deserve it on some level or you wouldn't be asking for it. So when you don't want to ask for help, you're going to have to answer to yourself, dear one, why are you disbelieving your belonging and your worthiness? Very related here. So Brenna says she has the all or nothing thinking. That's her particular brand of perfectionism. Oh, so painful. All or nothing. Yes, dear one. Thank you for sharing. Caitlin, I'm a type 8 defender who seeks control. So for her, it's success. Oh, success. So elusive. Yeah, so ambiguous. We all have to define it for ourselves, don't we? Micah, I put perfection is bullshit on my mirror. Yes, dear one. That's so beautiful. I love it. I want to make some like beautiful typography, like banner with like cursive that people are like, huh, when they see it in my house. That would just be fun for me. Caitlin says, talking to others and being open about my struggles always helps because I usually find I'm not alone in my thoughts and feelings. Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to affirm your worthiness and belonging. To be witnessed. To be witnessed. This is why we all need circle. We all need community, sangha, whatever that looks like for you. You know, these self love sermons don't exist in a vacuum. We got to take this off the pulpit and into the community, you know, because we have to be witnessed. That is everything, Caitlin. Good point. Okay, so, oh, and one more. Micah says, mantras and affirmations have been really helpful for me. I've begun taking a moment in the morning and then at transitions throughout the day, like coming home from work, to check in about what I most need to hear. And then I repeat that to myself a few times. I have some visual reminders around some that I use a lot. That's so good, Micah. Yes, the mantras, the affirmations, the visual symbols. And like we need these things, even though we don't want to need them, we need them and we need to repeat them even when we don't believe them. I think that's the magic of mantra is even if we don't believe it, we have to say it and we have to start somewhere. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Micah. That is really helpful. Really, really helpful. I know that's going to help someone. All right, dear ones, let's do a final little practice together. Coming to stillness, closing the eyes, taking a deep breath in through the nose, and release. Letting your breath return to normal. Just noticing how you feel in your body right now after this chat. Maybe there's been some shifts in perspective. Just letting it settle, holding space for that transition. I just invite you, dear one, to take your right arm and put it on your left shoulder. Take your left hand and place it on your right shoulder. And just wiggle back and forth, moving from right to left to right to left. Moving the neck if that feels good. Slowly coming back to stillness. Taking a deep breath in. And just repeat after me. I am worthy. I belong. I am worthy. I belong. Just as I am. I am worthy. Just as I am, I belong. There is nothing I have to do. There is nothing that has to happen. I am worthy and I belong. Taking another deep breath in and another vigorous hug of yourself in whatever way feels good. And letting it go. Giving yourself a nice little shoulder rub, a little massage. Squeezing the arms, shaking out anything from the wrists and the fingers. Great work tonight, dear ones. I invite you to go journal, write down, record any reflections that came through tonight, and really commit to some sort of way you can nurture and remember the sense of worthiness and belonging on a regular basis as part of your practice. Sending so much love to all of you. Just a reminder to please join next week. Please tell your friends, let's get this community going even more, even bigger. Donate if you feel led, if you would like to make an energetic exchange with me tonight. And I will be sharing the replay soon. You can also send me any suggestions for future talks, anything you would really love to hear a talk on or get some practices around, get some advice around. I am a professional life coach. Take advantage. Ask me your questions, and I will bring it into the self-love sermons, dear ones. All right. Well, have a great evening. Have a great night. So much love. Be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Love you. Bye.